So where we last left off, we were discussing taking planar surfaces and turning them into actual volumes. Now in this section, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into creating unique volumes. We're going to accomplish that using the Boolean tools. Boolean tools in Rhino are essentially tools that allow us to do things like add and subtract these simple shapes to create really interesting and more complex ones. Now before we do that, let's draw up some shapes for us to actually try combining and subtracting first. So as you remember, we first need a polyline to actually draw a planar surface and extrude a volume with. Now since we have all of our O snaps on, we could draw a polyline one segment at a time, but this time why don't we try using the rectangle tool instead. Let's select the rectangle tool. We move over here to the top so that we're in a flat work plane. Let's say we want to draw a smaller volume that's 3 meters by 3 meters by 3 meters in height. We select a point, and then as you can see, as we drag the rectangle tool, it drags along with us. Now, thanks to the fact that we know that we're in meters, when you check down here, you can see what units we're in. If you want to produce a precise surface area measurement, we're going to try just typing. We'll start with just typing 3 and hitting enter. Now look at that. That's now established. It's going to maintain 3 meters exactly in the red axis direction. Now if we type 3 again, we type 3, hit enter. Now that's 3 meters in the green axis direction. So there we have it. We've got a perfect 3 meters by 3 meters rectangle to work from. Now we're going to turn him into a planar surface like we did in the last video. We'll select that closed polyline. We type in planar, and it completes for us, planar surface. We hit enter, and there we have a surface. We can select that surface. We can type extrude in the command, extrude surface, and all we have to do is type 3. It appears in the command line, and we hit enter. Just like that, we've created another volume. We'll use him to demonstrate what Booleans can do in just a minute. But before we jump to that, just for fun, why don't we create another shape with the circle tool? We select the circle, move over to our top work plane, and let's say that we want to keep them at a consistent scale. Look at that. As we drag, it's going to give us options as to where it wants us to snap on the grid. Since we're just using the command line, let's type 1.5 this time, hit enter, and there we have a closed circle. We can select that circle, turn it into a planar surface by typing planar surface in the command, hitting enter, and just like before, extrude surface typed into the command, enter. And you know what, just for fun, let's make this one 6 meters instead of 3 meters. So we type 6, we hit enter, and there we have it. Now we've got a few different volumes to play with as we figure out what Booleans are all about. So like I was saying, Booleans are basically tools in Rhino that allow us to create really unique volume by combination, subtraction, and that sort of thing. Now in this lesson, we're going to focus on BooleanUnion and BooleanDifference, which is essentially a combination of shapes and subtraction of shapes. Let's take a look right now. We'll move over to our perspective view here. Hold the right click down. We'll orbit around a little bit to see what we're looking at. Now let's say we want to combine these two shapes. With BooleanUnion, we can do this very easily. So let's grab this smaller shape. We'll select him. We're going to use the move tool so that the two are actually touching and there's something for them to combine together. Type M for move. V-E. Hit enter. This is where it's nice to have the O snaps on, because we'll snap to this corner. See, we'll grab him right there. And we'll move him right over there like that. Now when we look at this, these two pieces are kind of inside one another, but they're not really combined. Like they're currently separate. This is where we're going to use BooleanUnion. So to combine these two volumes, we're going to type Boolean, B-O-O-L-E-A-N, union, and we're going to hit enter. And it's going to ask us what surfaces or polysurfaces, like these two volumes we've got right here, do we want to combine. So first we'll click this one, and then we'll click this one. Left click one each. Now that we've got them both selected, we're just going to hit enter, and look at that. That's now one solid piece right there. And if we want any proof that that's solid, we can just click anywhere on this new summative volume. We'll click, we'll type volume, L-U-M-E, in the command bar, hit enter, and look at that. It produces a single volume of cubic meters for this new single piece that we've built. So that's basically how BooleanUnion works. Now let's talk about BooleanDifference, which is like subtraction. So in your models, you're probably going to end up having to create some doors and openings and things like that. That's where BooleanDifference is really useful. Let's say we're using this small volume to create sort of like a door in this bigger volume. Here's how you do it. We're going to select the smaller surface just like before. We're going to type move and hit enter. It's going to ask us where we want to move it from. We'll select this point because it's a nice accessible corner. We'll grab him. And now that the two are touching, we can think about doing a Boolean difference. Now the idea is we want to subtract this from this so that there's just a nice door hole shape left in there. Here's how it's done. In the command bar, we can just start typing Boolean, B-O-O-L-E-A-N, and then difference, D-I-F-F-E-R-E-N-C-E. Then we'll hit enter. And it's going to ask us up here, select surfaces or polysurfaces to subtract from. Okay, so since we know that we want this big mass here to essentially have a door chunk taken out of it, this is going to be the big surface that we want to subtract from. So let's select it. We'll click anywhere on this volume and hit enter. Great. Now it says select surfaces or polysurfaces to subtract with. Now this little volume right here, that's going to be our subtraction tool. That's what we'll be taking away from the bigger volume. So we'll select this. Select, hit enter, and look at that. That cuts a hole right where that difference was. It's almost like that other volume was sort of like a chisel that was used to break a whole chunk of that volume out of it. And that's Boolean difference. Now let's say we have a lot of pieces that we want to suddenly add or subtract. Thankfully, the BooleanUnion and BooleanDifference tools can work on more than two objects at once. Let's say that this is a space where we want to add 3 smaller volumes onto it, and we want to do this kind of quickly. We would still type BooleanUnion, just like before. We'd hit enter, select surfaces or polysurfaces to union. This time we'd select this one and all 3 of these smaller ones and hit enter. Look at that. It combines all of those in one shot. And then if we check the volume, we see that produced one single polysurface, one single volume. The same works with Boolean difference. Let's try it. Boolean, we type Boolean difference, D-I-F-E. Here we are. Autocomplete finishes it for us. We hit enter. Select surfaces or polysurfaces to subtract from. Once again, this big volume is what we want to subtract from. We'll select anywhere on him, hit enter, select surfaces or polysurfaces to subtract with. This time we'll just select all 3 of these pieces. And these 3 sections will chisel out that difference. And there we have it. There might be times in the future where you're putting together much more complicated models And being able to Boolean union or do a difference of a lot of things at once is going to be really helpful. As long as you specify what you want it to cut away from first, the big piece, and it's using an actual volume to cut away, you can add or subtract as many things as you want. Now before we move on, there's another essential piece of Booleans that we need to make sure we understand. Let's take this cylinder here. Now let's say that we wanted to take this piece and subtract a cylindrical cut out of the roof of this piece. Why don't we try doing exactly what we did before? We're going to try to do a Boolean difference, B-O-O-L-E-A-N, difference, hit D, it fills it in for us, we hit enter, select surfaces to subtract from, we want to cut out of this one, so we select, we hit enter, which surfaces, select surfaces to subtract with, we want it to be the cylindrical piece, so we'll click and we'll hit enter. But look, objects do not intersect, we can see right up here. Objects do not intersect and nothing is done. For Booleans to work, the volumes need to actually be touching. There needs to be some sort of contact between the two of them. Now this would be very easy to fix here. We would just grab this volume, click, left click, type M, hit enter for move. We could even move down to the front view if we wanted to. Grab him anywhere from here. You can see the corresponding perspective view, so that now when you look, the two are actually in contact with one another. Let's try that Boolean difference again now. Type Boolean, D, hit enter. Select surfaces to subtract from, this big one. To subtract with, we'll take the cylinder, select, hit enter, and that works perfectly. As long as the volumes are actually in contact with one another, the Boolean tools are extremely effective at creating unique objects in Rhino.